Kevin has an idea. I'd like to call this meeting of front row. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Town Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The same thing was really loud.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Here.
Here.
Here. Yes. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
At this time, do any resident or property owners would like to address the council? Hearing none, is Mr. Diaz here? Okay, we may get out here real early tonight.
Well, is Mike going to stand in for him?
No.
Okay, well, if Mr. Diaz, actually, when Mr. Diaz was a town councilor, we started at 7:30, and perhaps he is
Doesn't
thinking
know?
he doesn't know. So we'll give him a little, but not much.
5 minutes.
At this time, are there any comments of town councilors? Mr. Marshall.
Next weekend, the 18th, there's going to be a ribbon cutting down at the Ledyard Animal Control for the new outdoor kennel. The materials and labor were donated by Luther Fence and Spinning Twigs. And we're going to have a picnic for them, and it's open for everybody, actually, all the volunteers and town residents. So come on down, it's around noon time, I think.
Any other council comments? Mr. Eichelberg.
Mr. Diaz has arrived.
Okay, well, let's finish the council comments, and then we'll go to Mr. Diaz.
Okay. That was not my...
You can, Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you. As much as I support the location that's been suggested for the new Ledyard police office, it is a sad commentary on this side of town when you can't get a decent cup of coffee after 6 p.m. And that's my comment.
I'll say you mine.
Not after you touched it.
Any other comments? Ms. McGrattan.
I would like to thank Roxanne and Bruce Edwards for filling out the application for the cable TV advisory. They have giving us $7,000 to enhance what we already have for using the cable TV.
Mr. France.
Last evening we had a town meeting for discussion of the
police station. First, I want to thank the people that came out, the residents came out to provide their comments. After the meeting, there was several discussions related to the financial side of the process. And I want to clarify some of that because there was confusion as to the bonds and how they were issued and when the payments would start. The mayor covered that in his presentation, but there was still confusion related to that. The bond, what we're voting on in the referendum is to allow issuance of bonds. That does not mean that's what the final cost of the project is. There's still work to be done by the building committee to develop the final schematic and building drawings and final design, and then it goes out for bid. And a competitive bid historically has come in under what the estimate is. There's a long-standing history that is true. In addition, the bonds are not all issued up front. It isn't as if the day after the vote, the town goes out and issues $6.75 million in bonds and waits for the design to come in, and we pay on those bonds while we're doing the design. The bonds are not issued until the construction contract is let, and the bonds are only issued as the payments are required to meet the construction schedule. And then, conversely, the payments on those bonds follow the issuance. So there will probably be a couple years before the bonds are actually issued, and then the payments would start. So, and finally, there's other discussions about kind of what's the rush, and there's been a long discussion about this topic. The Permanent Municipal Building Committee first recommended use for that the old firehouse, and one of the uses was relocation for the police station. That was back in 2007. There was a facility study in 2011. There's been ongoing discussions among the previous councils and the mayor's office and the staff. And then the design of the building is not for what we're doing now. We looked out 30 years in that design of what potential growth there would and the needs of the community. So some of the near-term discussions that are going on and have been allocated as reasons for delay really don't apply to design of a municipal building that we're looking out 30 years for the construction. So I guess the final message I have to the residents is please go look at the facility study, do the research, and make an informed decision when we come up with a referendum. Because we have not rushed into this. The building committee has been looking at it in detail for over a year. And before that, it was looked at as a conceptual idea long before that. Thank you.
Are there any other comments of town councilors? Hearing none, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. I apologize. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get this display on the TV, but I do have handouts for all of you. I'm Jim Diaz. I'm the chairman of the Ledyard WPCA. Thank you for inviting me here today. Hello, there's some faces I remember up here.
We figured you forgot the time, that we changed the time of the meeting, that you were late because of that.
Actually, I just figured it out at 2 minutes up. So, okay, so you've seen the water department budget. The water department budget is the first page of a handout. And it shows a projected operating revenue of $821,700. The total projected direct expenses are $817,692. Other expenses are $108,850 for total projected expenses of $926,542. Now that amounts to 112.76% of our operating revenue. And there are other revenues that we receive, things like assessment revenue and revenue for the wheeling fees up to around 12. But we're not looking at that because those monies, the assessment revenue, obviously goes to the town for the bonding. And the money for the wheeling fees is meant to support the water tower and the maintenance, the future maintenance of the water tower. So we've not included those revenue. We're just looking at the revenue that we receive from water usage, right, and other miscellaneous items. So showing that, looking at that budget, and you'll notice, I think, well, you might not have that document, but if you look at our full, let me just get to that page. Our budget for this year is actually less than last year, so we've reduced expenses. So the budget last year, total direct expenses, $842,106. This year, $817,692. So if you look at the direct expenses associated with making the water, our expenses have gone down. Now, in this year, we are planning to start paying back the sewer department. That's something that we haven't done for decades. So you see that in our budget, and you'll also see a $20,000 towards capital and non-recurring, so we can put money in the bank for emergencies in the future. Okay. This year, we've had better financial data than we've ever had before. So we're getting there, right? Thanks to the town's finance department, we're getting some good financial information now. So we're pretty, we look at these numbers and we're pretty certain of them. Right? Revenue is based on year-to-date revenue, right? It takes into account the new customers we'll have with the recent water extension, right? So we think we've looked at all potential changes to the status quo, right? And we think that the revenue figures are fairly accurate, the projected revenue figures. So looking at that, 13% that's how we came up with the 13% increase. Now, if you look at our next page, I've shown you the current and proposed water rates. And, there's 3 colors there. Actually there's more than 3 colors, but the current water rates are in blue and the proposed water rates are in green. We have, for those of you who don't know, we have 3 basic water rates in the WPCA. We have a residential, single-family, single-meter rate. We have an apartment rate for a smaller facility, and then we have a schools, churches, and commercial rate. Both our residential rates and our apartment rates are a quarterly billing rate. Our commercial rate is a monthly billing rate. We're not proposing that we change that currently, although we thought about it, the pricing and the issues with processing the bills and just the cost of stamps is huge. So we're going to stay with the quarterly billing rate currently for the residential customers. What I'm showing you here in my proposed water rates is around the 13%. It actually varies from a peak of 13.6 something down to 13.06. So I'm not asking you to, if you do a motion tonight, which I'm not, you don't have to do this. You can think about it for the next meeting if you have questions. I'm not asking you to propose a motion of a 13% increase. I'm asking you to approve these proposed rates because they fluctuate a little bit depending on usage. Okay, so you can see right now for a residential single-family metered home, 0 to 10,000 gallons, that's gallons, per quarter, we have a flat rate of $66. That's how we bill it. If you look at the next residential rate, apartment living units, 0 to 3,333 gallons, we have a flat water rate of $22. We're proposing that those rates go up to $75 for the single-family meter and $25 for the apartment living units. Now, that is roughly a 13.64% increase at that rate of usage. And then we continue, there's some rounding things here, but we continue down. If you look at our rates go up as the usage increases residentially. Now, that's not, the majority of people don't do it that way, but we're trying to get people to buy less from us, because I've never understood it. Conserve water, right?
This model is that.
So that predates me, you can tell, right? You can see what this indicates is, so there's After the 10,000 or the 33, then we charge on a per gallon basis from 10 to 20 and on, right? And the rate per 100 gallon is provided there on the left-hand column. That's for the current rates. So that's what we're proposing for rates. And I'm going to reference something here. There's a study that's done every 2 years. You might have seen this before, right? This is a sewer rate study, and we are in the WPCA reviewing the sewer rates as well. As you probably know, the sewer rates right now are a multiple of 1.45, I believe, of the water rates. We're not going to be increasing the sewage rates a full 13%. We're going to change that multiple. We believe the sewer rates need to increase somewhere around 7 to 8%, but the WPCA has not finalized that number yet. So, and that we don't have to ask you for approval for that. Thank God. But if you look at this, this is a very interesting, and I'll leave these two with you. I did send a PDF that has these included with it to Roxanne, so she'll send that to you after I leave, and certainly you can contact me with any questions. But this talks about the water rates in Connecticut. And it says a variety of water rate structures are used in Connecticut based on the written survey. 68% of water supplies use a flat or uniform rate structure. 25% use a descending rate structure, and 7% use an ascending rate structure, which we do. Right? That's not true in the commercial rate. And our commercial rate is flat. Right? Our commercial rate is 0 to 10,000 gallons to $100 monthly. Right? That's the proposed rate from the current 88. Right? So our commercial rate is the same percentage that we're looking for, and then it's flat. It's flat on out there. To allow for comparative analysis, we have calculated the typical annual homeowner's cost, assuming consumption of 72,000 gallons per year, and that's a lot. So, based on the information included in the survey, typical 2011 annual water costs in Connecticut range from a low of 155 to a high of 729. Right. In this survey, we are currently at 450 or something like that, and this rate increase will bring us to 500 and something using those gallons. Right? So we're still well within that band, right? But we still seem high in that band. Right? But if you do this same calculation at what I would consider a more reasonable gallons per year, because looking at our billing, most of our residential customers are paying that flat rate of 66 or 22. Right? We go further down in that band. Okay, so everyone's always said to me, we're really high. Well, I think we're really high. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're saying 72,000 gallons. And we're not seeing that in the usage that I see in the water department. So we're not necessarily that high. For instance, even with this increase, we'll be cheaper than Groton customers, right, at that usage. So we're still offering, I think, a good value to our customers, right? We haven't had an increase in rates since, I think it was 2009 that we approved the last rate increase. The council very wisely approved a 10% increase instead of a 30% increase that was being asked then, because we had doubts in the financial data that we were receiving. This 13%, I think, will also last us a while. Right? I don't think we want to wait 5 years for the next rate increase. I would think we want to do smaller increases more frequently, because 13% is not a small rate increase. We're aware as a WPCA that this is not small, especially in these economic times, right? But it's necessary for the WPCA to stay afloat and to carry and to be able to pay its expenses. We also think that it might last a few years, because we're hoping with changes to like the well system that we're putting in a pumping station, we can decrease some costs, right? With new contracts that we're going to be talking to Groton Utilities about, and perhaps longer-term contracts, we can reduce some of those costs. So we believe 13%, we're not going to come next month, or in 6 months and ask you for another one. We know it's at least good for a year, and in my gut, I think it's good for at least 3. So, please, if you have any questions, feel free to.
Any questions, Council? What the
Has the WPCA had a public hearing on this rate increase?
No, we won't do that until you approve it first.
No, we approve it after you do the public hearing.
Oh, okay, so,
So we can't approve it until you do your public hearing.
okay, good.
So you need to do that real quick.
Okay, well, I think Mike Cherry, who knows this stuff much better than I, got all of that arranged. He's my co-chair of the WPCA.
Is this what I'm supposed to say? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're looking at dates when the auditorium's available at the high school, because we have to invite all our current and future
Correct.
customers, plus anybody that's interested. The only point I will add is I did get a bill from SQA this week for quarters for 15,000 gallons, which is a lot less than what falls in that survey, and it's 30% more than what we are asking for after the rate increase.
Oh, I'm not questioning the rate increase after
So
30% request 4 years ago. I think 13
Yeah.
is not unreasonable. I just wanted to see if you had feedback from the customers.
Not yet,
Not yet.
but apparently we're getting it.
Okay. Mr. Saunders.
So, as most people know, I've been following the WPCA for a few years. And I want to thank Chairman Diaz and the existing WPCA and the past WPCAs, but especially this one, for the hard work they put into bringing this to a scientific, analytical conclusion. A couple more facts. In the past, the WPCA has absorbed rate increases from Groton for water that we purchased. And that's part of the reason they came to us and asked for a 30% rate increase in 2008. And here we are 5 years later, approving, or potentially approving a 13% on top of the 10% 2 years ago. So, excellent job. Thank you very much. And especially for Chairman Diaz and Member Terry Jones. Those two volunteered to serve for a year on this WPCA, and they noticed last week that it's been more than a year. So thank you for that too.
They didn't ask to resign, did they?
No, they didn't.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
I had just a question. I mentioned this before about the brackets, and have you considered reducing the minimum usage from 10,000 gallons? I'm not sure if that's consistent with other towns. What it would do is it would certainly, reward people who use less. I know you're trying to sell water, but it would, I just think 10,000 gallons seems on the high side. It's comparable to your commercial limits, and it's 3 times as much as the apartments. So I was just wondering if that was ever a consideration.
We discussed going to monthly billing and changing the way we're billing our residential customers, and that would involve changing that threshold of 10,000 gallons. But we haven't looked at it carefully enough. And, we're starting a new budget year. We've provided a budget that's not balanced with revenue. So we felt now is not the time to go into that analysis. And also, very shortly, we'll be developing a new contract, hopefully, for services. And I think at that time, maybe we can look at a shift in that $10,000 gallon range. But that wouldn't necessitate, in my mind, a price change, right? We could still use the same prices, right? We just changed the way we structure the billing. I'm not sure whether that would need another public hearing or not, or approval. We'll have to get Mike to research that. But we will look at it in the future. We intend to look at a lot more about billing in the future. But we want to do that coincident with the long-term contract with Roger Utilities.
Any other comments? Well, let me just add, because you know I've worn a lot of different hats, and my least favorite hat is the WPCA hat. That was just, I just did not like that at all. So,
It was still a good move, though.
oh, it was a great move, but not my favorite job ever. So I'm really appreciative of what you've done, Terry Jones and Mike. It just, we're in such a better place than we were 2 years ago. Such a better place, and we have you to thank for that. So thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Now. Good night.
Good night. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. I'll move them all. And the minutes of the 24th are as, they're already published, correct? Yes. That's fine.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. You received your communications and referrals today. This time we'll do council subcommittee liaison reports. Administration committee, Mr. Eichelberg.
Administration Committee met earlier this evening. We forwarded several appointments. We also looked at the police job description and a couple of other items that we'll see later in our agenda.
Thank you. Any questions for admin? Community services?
We have not met since our last meeting.
Questions for community services? Finance?
Finance Committee met last Wednesday. In addition to the items that were brought forward, that will be brought forward later in the meeting, we held a discussion on ordinance 114 related to funding of ambulance service. Had a good discussion with Jake Troy, and then Russ Shaw went to the LB's meeting and then presented the changes that were incorporated into the ordinance to get their concurrence, which we did get that night. We'll bring that ordinance back to the Finance Committee at our next meeting, and then with the public hearing scheduled in 2 weeks, we expect to deal with the passing of that ordinance at our town council meeting in 2 weeks.
Any questions for finance? Information technology, Councilor Solms.
The committee met last night with the Director of Planning and the Director of MIS regarding the town's main websites. All were in agreement that the experience for all users should be seamless with regard to the location of information. And I want to say before I go further that this was a meeting and a discussion about town websites, but this is really the mayor's purview. So we're couching this in terms of should we agree that things should happen, but it's really the mayor's decision. So there was near unanimous consent that all town websites should have the same look and feel, and the navigation for all users should be seamless. The alternative to that is you have only one website. But that a purpose is served by the existing sites at the present time. The goal is to make the experience easier for all users, and to make it possible to access all documents used by the departments, boards, and committees available and accessible without the user needing to know what sites to go to in order to have all the information that is available to those boards and committees. Presently, there are some boards and committees that have their own websites as well as organizations in the town. So it's still a little hard to find information. There's not one central repository. So we reached agreement on 2 steps, and then we'll see if we can go further in the future. The first is that legislative files currently listed on ledyarddevelopment.com will be posted on IQN2, and the Planning Commission will work with you, administrative assistant, to implement this. And again, pending the mayor's approval. We thought that was the first one that should be moved so that there's a single set of legislative files in one place on the document, the platform that the town uses. Secondly, other files such as HTML files currently on ledyarddevelopment.com should remain on that site because HTML serves their purpose more effectively. But legislative files on IQM2 and the town of Ledyard site should link to those documents as appropriate, and the link should open the specific document, not just take you to ledyarddevelopment.com. So those were the 2 steps that we reached agreement on. Again, this is the mayor's decision, but we thought it was an effective step forward in making it easier for all users. In other business, the MIS director reported that the kiosk is now in place for building permits. It's being used and the users like it. And the system also has the capability to email the user when they filed an application and let them know it's been received. MIS is working on reports and are getting the building inspector tablet for mobile access. Users cannot yet apply for permits. This is for building permits. They can't do it remotely yet because we have to put in place an online payment system. You have to pay for your permit before it's issued. And also the town applied for the CTAS grant yesterday. We've got a microphone, cabinet to store equipment in, and a laptop with editing software for the high school to use to create informational videos such as the one being used now, created now for recycling. And I want to second Councilor McGrattan's thanks to Mr. Bruce Edwards for making that happen. That's my report.
Any questions for IT? I do have a question. I always use the expression at work is if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, would you have the information you needed? And I sort of have a manual, that type of thing. If the websites that are not controlled by the IT director, if the proverbial bus hit, would she be able to access those other sites? Does she have password information? Does she know where they're hosted? Does she know what server they're on?
I would have to speculate. I'm going to defer to Chairman Cherry. Do you know specifically about that?
I know the information would be available to the director, but I don't know that she has the access and password information, and that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, it's a very good one. I suspect the answer is no, but I don't want to speculate.
Okay, but something to look forward to. Any other questions for IT? Land use planning, public works.
Land use also met last evening. We discussed the wording of the tax abatement proposed language has been with us for a long time. It's starting to now forward. Now we've got some more financial information. We agreed with the language of the tax abatement document, move that forward for the financial information to do, so we can move that process forward. It's been long stalled. Started discussion on long-term uses for Clark Farm. There were no real ideas that come up at last night's meeting, and the only request we have is from the Avalon Bank Conservancy to maintain that open space. Just one item for consideration. Starting with parcel being leased for farming, and we'll continue discussion for what the long-term goals are, what we want to do with the property. Talked with Mike Cherry last night, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as far as the road ordinance 45 updates go, and we're going to work with that board to rewrite that ordinance. Discussed the opening of Lambtown Road for the season. We agreed with the mayor's initial concept of that is that we'll leave it open for this season. At the time we can close it again for the winter, we'll assess where the road is and then make a determination whether or not we want to close the road permanently or keep it seasonally open. We reviewed the proposed ordinance 118 with modifications to include the ability of the Inland and Wetlands Commission to issue citations and fines. Although we agreed with the proposed language addition that was to the ordinance, I have some reservations of whether or not the state statute allows us to do it in one ordinance or not, so we're still doing that. And we're still awaiting word from the Conservation Commission on the proposal for Avalonia to take some property into trust. And that's my report.
And Volpe property. It's on tonight's.
We'll talk that's on the agenda.
Any other questions for Councilor Dombrowski? I have a question, and I should know this. What is this, because I think somebody asked me, what is the status of Parks and Recs using the Clark Farm?
I talked to Mark Bancroft this afternoon about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and what it is that right now we have a lease with Mr. Walter Major, who's using it for farming, but he has allowed the Parks and Recs to use it for lacrosse team. So they kind of work in concert.
Okay, and I thought we had that discussion the last meeting we had, but I wasn't sure that it shouldn't still, we have jurisdiction of that property, correct?
Correct. The town council has administrative control of the property, and talking with Mark Bancroft today about it is that Mr. Major says that he only farms that portion of the property and uses it in late October, which would be after the time of the lacrosse.
Okay, so perhaps Parks and Rec should come through the town council as far as utilizing the property?
In my opinion, they should.
Okay, when's lacrosse season? What time of year? I forget. Now, okay. Okay, so maybe by
Maybe the
the
liaison could check with Parks and
I
Rec
could,
about
yes.
that.
If they would ever meet, ouch, I would bring it up.
Couldn't help myself, sorry.
That's all right. Board of Education Liaison, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, the Board of Ed did meet. I did not have my iPad, but I had my trusty legal pad, and that actually worked as well. The 4 elementary schools all secured $500 grants for providing healthy choices for meals, so they're putting those to work. The Ledyard Middle School, they are still working on some details regarding the cost build-out. It's now pared down to about $39 million, which takes away the pre-K wing of the school. Pursuant to a request by the Permanent Building Committee, they have started working on a long-term plan for dealing with all the schools. So the Board of Ed is working on that plan now, and they will provide us detail on that as that comes together. The final Ledyard High School asbestos abatement project, that bid has been awarded, and that final phase will be starting. Parent-teacher conferences, there was just a little bit of information on that, and sorry, high school kids, looks like your parents don't care as much about you, because only about 33% of your parents went to a parent-teacher conference, compared to 93% at Ledyard Center School, but that's all right. And then in the strategic planning phase of things, they have implemented the full day K. Yeah, they are. They've already implemented the full day K, so that's coming this fall. English and language arts is another portion of the strategic planning, and that's implemented this year. Math is in the first year of implementation, and they're working on feedback from the teachers to edit the plan and kind of sharpen it up a little bit as they see fit. And they're also doing end-of-year assessments of the teachers, and I think I had updated everybody on how they're progressing with that. And then they are working on a couple new classes right now, Algebra 3, which sounds very exciting, and Personal Finance, which I think is a great thing for them to do. So they're working on a curriculum for that, and if it comes together, the Board of Ed approves it. Those will be new classes at the high school. And they approved the spending of the agri-science grant to the tune of $84,950. So agri-science is getting a bunch of new equipment and a tractor and some implements. And that is my report. Yes.
Any questions for our Board of Education Liaison? And would anybody like to volunteer for the 2 meetings that we attended? The Board of Ed meetings that we attended. The meeting with the Facilities Committee of the Board of Ed and the meeting with the Permanent Building Committee. Would anybody like to do an update on that, or I'm happy to do it?
Please do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we attended, as several counselors attended the Facilities Committee meeting of the Board of Education. At that meeting, we expressed some concerns about the decision to close the Ledyard Center School, as to who makes that decision and what the process is. We discussed a lot about process. That meeting was, that meeting's over. The next meeting was, the next meeting was the meeting we had just 2 nights ago with the Permanent Building Committee. That was a very constructive meeting. The Board of Ed is now going to have a sort of retreat, as they call it, and to come up with some ideas. They also are gathering all of the information about class size, needs, etc., to give to the building committee. And now, if anybody that was there would like to jump in, or if you think I summed it up. I mean, there was a lot more to it, but let's just say the last meeting was, I thought, a very positive meeting. And I think we're now sort of all on the same page, rather than in different books. Okay. Other liaisons, WPCA, Mr. Soms.
WPCA has not met, but we have updated the bid specs for the pump station for Avery Hill Mobile Home Park. It has been submitted to the Department of Public Health, so now we're hoping to get it back quickly so we can get that part of the project done. At this point, it's with DPH, so we just hope and call once in a while, but the town planner is on there. That's my report.
Any questions for WPCA? Report of the mayor, Mayor Rodlico.
Okay, thank you very much. Few items. The town received the first FEMA reimbursement for Storm Sandy. We received about $38,000. That was mostly designated to reimburse us for costs that we had from Public Works, overtime, cleanup, things like that, using all of our vehicles, generators. We're expecting an additional $29,000, which would go towards reimbursements for emergency services, WPCA, and Board of Ed expenses for a total of $66,000. I'd like to especially thank Public Works Director Steve Maslin for his diligence in pursuing this disaster relief. As you can imagine, you're dealing with federal funds administered through the state, very, very meticulous about the way the information needs to be presented. And, you know, this was one of the lessons we learned from some of the earlier storms, that right as soon as, you know, right after the storm, start putting your numbers together. And I believe we had an advantage because we started doing that right away. And that's paying off. Saturday, May 18th, from 9 o'clock until 3:30 is mulch day at the transfer station. Mulch day. We've never had one of these before. We have 2 gigantic mountains of mulch. This is all of the brush that we ground up from the storms. We have 2 big mountains of mulch. You've got the flaky kind, I should have brought some samples, and the dark kind, and then we have a big mountain of more brush that needs to be ground. We need to move that mulch along. So what we're doing that day is we're going to have someone from Public Works up at the transfer station loading your truck. So if you bring your truck up there, they'll have something there to load you up. That comes as many times as you want. First come, first served. And so that'll just be a great day for everyone. Maybe John will have that. You can stop by Animal Control on your way up there also.
Will CNN be there?
What's that?
CNN going to be there?
I don't know if we can get that much. I'm sure we'll have the rest of the press there. Okay. We are monitoring the current year's budget. We have not instituted any type of a freeze. We're in the last 2 months of the budget. But I have asked all the departments to scrutinize all expenditures. Don't just take any, this is the way we've always done business, this is the way we staff, this is the way we do things. We expect that we're going to bring the budget in as we have to, under the levels, but the reserves and the surplus we expect to be reduced from what we see last year. So, again, we are being diligent on that. This is the last town council meeting before the budget referendum. The budget referendum is on the 21st. The day before that, May 20th, is a town meeting, annual town meeting on the budget. If you have any questions on the budget or the referendum on the police building, I would encourage you to speak to the council or contact my office. We'd like to see a good group of people. I know our numbers in our referendums have been coming down, and we can take that as a positive sign, that people are pleased with the way things have gone. But I think this year we have a very serious decision to make with the police building. Last night we had a town meeting, and as Councilor France mentioned, I thought we had a very good discussion of the issue, and there are certainly differences. I know that I myself, as you all know, had some different ideas last year about where the police station should go. A consensus has been put together, and I think we've made the right decision, and we'd like to move forward with that. It's something that our police deserve, and it's something we've been looking to for a long time, and I think it's part of the plan as far as long-term capital and infrastructure improvement. I had someone today that was at the town meeting yesterday and expressed some concerns. They came to my office, we sat down with them, answered many more of their questions. And so again, I would encourage you, if you have questions, I'm not going to try to talk you into anything. I believe in the power of the people and the power of the referendum as in our charter. But if you have questions, we'd like you to make an informed decision, and we'd like to see a good turnout. You know, if you look at a recent election this week in Groton, I mean, the turnout was just, considering the issues there, very, very low turnout. But we'd like to see people turn out. It's an opportunity that you have on a yearly basis to influence the government. Alton Heights finally is moving right along. They're installing laterals. I was up there today, and they're filling and seeding the areas. So that project, I'm very pleased with the way that's going. We're very, very encouraged that we can bring that project in at a lower rate, and that would possibly save us some money on some of the paving work we have to do on Avery Hill Road, and that would be a big benefit to the town in possibly trying to get more of our roads done this year. That's my report.
Any questions? Mayor Rodrigo. Mr. France.
Mr. Mayor, there was an email that I received today concerning Martin Lane roads, discussion we've had over a while. And my question, it seemed that from Steve Maslin's response, that he has estimates for some of the roads out there that may or may not be on the planned work. And a request from the Chair of Finance, if we could get a list of what those the costs are as we look forward to next year's budget process, we'll start the discussion. So we know, as you explained here, the Martin Lane, a quarter of what our projected expenditure would be in the coming year. We could get some of the data that they already have on that, so we can start looking at that. Since there is a plan for potential substantial increase in that particular line item in next year's budget.
Could I just ask a question? You received an email today, or did you receive a sheet that had different road?
No, this was an email from this Richard on Barton Lane.
Oh, okay. Not specific.
Specific on Barton Lane. Okay. In the email, he indicated he had an estimate or a rough estimate for that particular road, and I presume there are probably other things he has. I'm going to start looking at that, and that would happen to be on his list of what he's going to do in the next year.
Okay. Well, if I could, let me tell you what I have asked and what I do have from Mr. Maslin. What I've asked is for him to put me specifically, because the questions the council has asked is, what is our starting balance in terms of our bonding and this year's budget? What have we accomplished so far this year, for instance, Buil, Whitlock? And what do we have planned for this year? And then what's the contingency after that? The projects have been coming in under budget. What do we possibly intend to do? So I think what I'm hearing is that I can ask him to take that list and then add to it his next priorities. Now, the problem is some of the roads that people are raising questions about, they're just not on the list. And they're not even, so we can certainly give you an estimate. You're saying estimates for roads that would be next on the priority list?
Oh, yeah, for the next fiscal year.
Next fiscal year.
Next fiscal year.
And even like, for instance, Barton Lane is not on the list, but it has, somewhere he has an estimate for that particular one, so he may have others. If we're looking down the road at, there may be a reason not to have a flat budget every year for roads because of the timing, because of the non-main roads that we're maintaining well, certainly the secondary roads, the residential roads that are not part of our main distribution. Just want to get an understanding of what we're looking at for those.
Let me provide you with a list together now, which I think will take you more than through this year, and then have him then project to next year what he would think, assuming the same funding level. Right. And then we go from there.
That'd be great. Thank you.
We speak on a regular basis because as you can imagine, we get calls from people all the time. I was just up on another road today where someone happened to be a dear friend asked me if I could come up and take a look, and my reaction after I left was, I wish my road looked like this. So I guess plowing and potholes are in the eye of the beholder. People have to realize that some of the orphan roads and some of the I wouldn't even call them secondary roads, they're just not even on the horizon unless lightning strikes. So it's frustrating. I understand it's frustrating, but we do talk on a regular basis. We're trying to get some of those feeder roads and main roads, and I think by the end of this year we're going to make a pretty good dent in that. The state is going to be finishing up the north end of 117, so that's going to be, a pretty good job for the town, considering having that entire road done. So I will get that information. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor.
Councilor comments are over, but I'm going to use the mayor's report as just a moment to kind of emphasize what he has already said. We do have a referendum coming up. We're looking at a number of very significant changes in the town this year. I hope we can do far better than Groton did in their turnout and voting. So I just encourage people, come on out, let your voice be heard, because we move it forward to you to decide what we're doing in this town.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Old business, item number 1.
I make a motion to remove from the table a motion to assign the town-owned Volpe property located at 1479 Route 12 to the Conservation Commission. In addition, recommend the town council approve the updated appendix B list of real properties owned or leased by the town of Ledyard contained in the draft dated March 25th, 2014, of the resolution establishing administrative control of town-owned or town-leased property to include the assignment of the Volpe property.
Second.
Any discussion?
At this point,
There's no discussion to remove from there.
Roxanne, would you call the roll? The discussion will happen when we bring it back. I shouldn't have said.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
The motion carries. Mr. Dombrowski?
Based on some of the discussions we had at the last meeting regarding this item, the land use committee that we discussed last night briefly is town council currently has administrative control based upon the resolution that all towns, that it's not assigned to a specific, we're the ones that's assigned to a specific board or commission. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to make a motion to remove the motion, to withdraw the motion in its entirety and maintain the administrative control by the town council of this project.
We can just vote the motion down.
Sure.
We can do that as well. Any other discussion then? Roxanne, this, no, we'll
No,
be,
he has to make the motion.
Motion.
So he can make however he wants to
oh,
make it.
make the same motion. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I make a motion to assign the town-owned Volpe property located at 1479 Route 12 to the Conservation Commission. In addition, recommend the town council approve the updated appendix B list of real properties owned or leased by the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated March 25th, 2013 of the resolution establishing administrative control of town-owned or town-leased property to include the assignment of Volpe property.
Second.
Any more discussion?
So a no vote will turn this motion down, retains control of the town.
Yes.
Just clarify.
Yes. Roxanne, would you
Because
call
we
the
don't do
roll?
too many no votes.
Right.
Mr. Marshall?
No.
Mrs. McGrattan?
No.
Mr. Soms?
No.
Mrs. Wadecki?
No.
Mr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Davis? Mrs. Davis?
No?
Mr. Dombrowski?
No.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Nay.
Mr. France?
No.
0 in favor, 9 opposed.
Motion is defeated. At this time, would anybody like to amend the agenda? At this time, would anybody like to remove any item from the consent calendar?
I'll move the consent calendar.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Roxanne, call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Let's see. I'm having difficulty telling where the consent ends. Is it
We're on
number
item
4?
4.
Okay. Item number 4.
So I will move to adopt a proposed revisions to ordinance number 3, ordinance regulating peddlers, hawkers, street vendors, itinerant vendors, and solicitors in the town of Ledyard, as contained in the draft dated March 21, 2013, with the non-substantive changes that were brought forward during public hearing.
Yeah, mine is.
That's interesting.
Oh, I was working on it.
Roxanne is updating as we speak.
Incorporating the comments
Let me read this one. So I will move to adopt a proposed revisions to ordinance number 3, ordinance regulating peddlers, hawkers, street vendors, itinerant vendors, and solicitors in the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated May 8, 2013, incorporating recommendations received at the public hearing held earlier this evening.
Second.
I would like to add that the issue with residential areas should be corrected by specifically calling out those areas in the actual permit form, which is not a part of the ordinance itself.
Any discussions or questions? Is everybody satisfied with that? Councilor Dombrowski, you look like you're thinking.
Thank you. How are you going to word it again?
Which part?
What you just said.
Not the motion.
Change, it's just going to say.
Residential change.
Okay, let me address this specifically.
He says it's not going to be specified in the ordinance, it's going to be specified in the...
Section 10 of the ordinance, and I'm getting to it. Section 10 of the ordinance reads, persons issued a license and/or sub-license under this ordinance shall not conduct their business in areas zoned for residential use unless expressly authorized by the chief of police, i.e. the mayor. That covers a lot of the town, including the village districts and a number of different areas. And so the suggestion has been made that in the permit, on the actual permit itself, it call out the residential areas where permission is authorized by the chief of police.
That way you don't have to keep changing the ordinance if areas change.
Well, I was thinking, but my opinion was if you change the word of section 10, just add one word and just so it says persons issued license and or sub-license under this ordinance shall not conduct their business in areas zoned for residential use only unless expressly authorized by the chief of police. That way, mixed-use districts such as Ledyard Center, village districts, that kind of thing would not, they're not residential only, they're mixed use.
Would that address your concern, Mike?
Both would be appropriate. You put only in and had it. I'm looking at enforcement. How do you know the mayor authorized it? Well, if there's a box on the form that's checked off or initialed by the mayor's designee, you're covered. I don't think the ordinance needs to list, like I did during the public hearing, all these places. I think that's...
Then we have to change those every time we change.
That's an administrative function that can be handled by the permitting process.
Right.
So I like both of your comments.
Easy
Can we do both?
Yeah, why not?
I think it does, if you do both, then what it does expands the areas that are authorized already by the ordinance and reduces the number of exceptions that have to be put in the permit.
Correct.
And so it then...
And it keeps it within the scope.
Right.
Yes.
So I think you do both.
And I think we still maintain the intent of the ordinance.
That allows mixed-use areas to be included within the ordinance, and the only exceptions that have to be made are the residential-only areas. Which should make sense.
Yeah. Councilor Eichelberg, would you then restate, can you just restate the motion for us? I hate to ask you to do that again. Could you do that, please?
You want to restate the motion or my suggestion?
The suggested changes. is
Okay, so the suggested changes will be that under Section 10, it will now read, persons issued a license and/or sub-license under this ordinance shall not conduct their business in areas zoned only for residential use unless expressly authorized by the chief of police. And along with that, the permit itself will include an area where the chief of police authorizes residential peddling, hawking, selling, etc.
It needs to be part of the language of the ordinance, I think. Because as you get the ordinance out 10 years after you read it, how does the mayor know that they have to write that?
It's on the permit.
Well, if you add, unless expressly authorized by the chief of police,
On the permit.
on the license.
There you go.
Okay.
On the license.
On the license.
On the permit.
Permit or is it a license?
It's,
Hence it's part of the ordinance you read.
The license.
It's a license and sub-license.
licensee permit.
Okay, go ahead.
Persons issued a license and/or sub-license under this ordinance shall not conduct their business in areas zoned only for residential use unless expressly authorized by the chief of police on the permit license. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes.
That works.
Okay, is everybody satisfied with that?
Now, you were able to get the other minor,
I'm gonna get them from Mike.
okay.
I'm gonna have him do the market copy.
Any further yes.
So now I have just a question of clarification. So, college kid, or doesn't matter if he's in college or not, but a kid comes by, wants to sell educational books in the town of Ledyard, fills out the application, pays the fee. Can he sell door to door in residential areas?
If the mayor gives him permission.
It's up to the mayor, right? Yes. All right, good.
Yeah, I guess I have an issue with the license and permit. In the ordinance, everything is called a license. The only place the permit is actually on the permit. So you reference a license in the ordinance, but you call the item a permit.
Well, she called it, in this change, she called it a license.
I thought we were going to change that just to be
So just call it a
harmonious.
Just call it a license.
It's a license, because everywhere it says revocation of the sub-license or any sub-licensee of a licensee may. So you're revoking the license. Everywhere in the ordinance, you're revoking or permitting a license. So
The actual permit itself says licensee permit.
I understand what that says, but the ordinance does not reference a permit. So either you have to change the language in the ordinance to reference a permit, everywhere it says license, or that permit, that you call it permit, needs to be called license.
I wish Mark were still here. Mark's
I recommend you strike the word permit.
But don't you fill a permit out to get a license?
Fill an application.
Okay.
So everywhere in the ordinance, write the word permit.
There is no place in the ordinance, there is permit. The only place
Except that
permit
you
is
were gonna add it.
permitted to get a license. The only way permit is used is permitted to get a license.
On each of the applications for the license, it says license permit or licensee permit. Right, permit
Just write permit from the forms.
from the form.
Yes. And anywhere where it says permit, like it says no permit will be issued, there should be no license will be issued in all of the forms. It's all in the forms.
So we're going to call it request for license, not licensee permit.
Is everybody satisfied? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Good work. Item number 5, Counselor Eichelberg.
We are not ready to move on that at this time.
Okay. Item number 6.
I'll move to appoint Mr. Dale Treadway, unaffiliated of 131 Military Highway, Gales Ferry, to the Commission for Senior Citizens for a 2-year term ending December 9, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Mr. Scarpa.
Second.
Any discussion? Good job. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Mr. Eichelberg?
I'll move to appoint Ms. Jean Ely, unaffiliated of 1981 Route 12, Gales Ferry, to the Commission for Senior Citizens for a 2-year term ending December 9, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Ms. Knoll.
Second.
Any discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I'll move to appoint Ms. Inga Mower, Republican, 39 Laurel Leaf Drive, Gales Ferry, to the Commission for Senior Citizens for a 2-year term ending December 9, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Mr. Dieter.
Second.
Any discussion? Roxanne?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item?
I'll move to appoint Mr. Thomas Harvey, Republican, 32 Terry Road, Gales Ferry, to the Commission for Senior Citizens for a 2-year term ending December 9, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Mr. F.X. Williams.
Second.
Any discussion? Are there any vacancies now, once we approve this?
No.
No. Very good. Good job.
Yeah.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item?
Now, let me say real quick, thank you to all these people who are willing to step up. We still have a number of boards and commissions that have vacancies, so anyone out there who wants to be involved in your town government, please step forward. But I'll move to appoint Ms. Julie A. DuPont Woody, unaffiliated, of 777 Long Cove Road, Gales Ferry, to the Inland Wetland and Watercourse Commission as an alternate member for a 2-year term ending October 31, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Ms. Seigelstein.
Second.
Any discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Finance Committee, item number 11.
To make a motion to set a public hearing date on May 22nd, 2013, to be held in the council chamber, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations on the proposed amendments to ordinance number 114 on ordinance, amending an ordinance authorizing the town of Ledyard to make appropriations for the furnishing of ambulance service and contained in the draft dated May 1st, 2013.
Second, a friendly amendment, it will be set for 6:30.
Second.
Doesn't say a time.
It's supposed to be 6.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 6:30.
Discussion?
As I talked about in councilor comments, this ordinance has been in the works for change, has been in the works for about a year. We've had several constructive meetings with LVs, the latest being our last town council, our last finance committee meeting, where following that meeting, the last 2 changes that needed to be made were taken to LVs and they accepted them. As I said, we're moving on the ordinance at our next finance committee meeting to refer to council following the public hearing.
Any questions? Yes.
I just wanted to point out, these changes were necessitated in part by the mayor's budget this year, taking $50,000 from LVs. It required a change to the ordinance to allow that to occur, so that's why we're kind of now moving it forward in May, even though we've been working on it for quite some time. But it needs to occur, and the changes allow a lot more flexibility than the ordinance allows now, so I think you'll be very happy with the changes.
Let me summarize 2 basic changes that I should have summarized. The first is, previous ordinance was a complicated computation based on non-Medicaid reimbursable amount for the previous year. You could only take 10% of that, which was a very challenging thing to compute. So what we've done with that is limited the amount that would come out to 10% of the balance in the account for the previous year. So that limits the ability or the reason to take excessive amounts out of each year to make sure that we maintain the integrity of that fund. In addition, it sets a floor on how much money has to remain into that account. It used to be $200,000, which was set many years ago based on the cost of an ambulance. That cost is about the same, but there are other expenses that the ambulance service would need during the year. So we reset that to an amount of $400,000, which would allow for the ambulance as well as their annual rent they have for their space and additional expenses that would allow a full year of operating expenses.
Any questions, discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
9 in
Motion carries. Item number 12.
I make a motion to approve a carryover in the amount of $5,500 from FY 12-13, account 10160101-51710, playgrounds and custodians, to FY 13-14, as requested by Parks and Recreation.
Second.
We don't typically roll over from one fiscal year to another, but this was necessitated by the school calendar extending out as long as it did. The Parks and Rec schedule had been delayed starting the week, and since Mr. Greasy has done a very good job of managing his budget, we thought it fair for him to be able to take the money and plan for the first week of those activities to be rolled into the next year, which is when the election starts.
Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 13.
Make a motion to authorize the historic district to go out to bid for structural repairs to the sawmill.
Second.
Need to make a friendly amendment that the historic district has changed the town of Ledyard.
Yes.
The town of Ledyard is actually who was out for the bid, not the historic district. So the motion will be motion to authorize the town of Ledyard to go out to bid for structural repairs to the sawmill.
Discussion?
The sawmill, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, identified some structural issues in the main timbers that support the mill. It was after the budget was brought forward. We're looking, and then the initial estimate is around $15,000 for the repair. So we're authorizing it now to go out for bids on that repair for the town to attempt to look at what's going to cost and then figure out how we're going to pay for it.
Well, yeah, this is not a motion we ordinarily make, and there was a lot of discussion at finance about this. The mayor requested the motion because we actually don't have the money. At least we don't believe we have the money. Mr. Fossum, in fact, thought he could do part of the repair this year and part of it next year and slip under the purchasing ordinance, but we told him that wasn't going to happen. So he wasn't particularly happy he had to go out to bid. So I think the mayor also wanted to cover the council agreeing to do it too, so that he wasn't the only bad guy there. But it does need to go out to bid, and it is a repair that absolutely has to be made. He brought us the color-coded what timbers are going to be replaced. But if basically you don't replace these timbers, the whole sawmill is going to collapse into itself. So it's a necessary repair.
And he's planning on us having it open for the fall season, so he's looking at it now.
Councilor Soms, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say I have a little experience with old buildings and timbers and sills rotting, and I've got to vote for it. Good thing.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 14.
With the motion to authorize health insurance benefit waiver remuneration for employees listed in the department head resolution at the rate of premium dollars saved as listed in the memo dated March 19, 2013.
Second.
The issue here is that department heads were reimbursed at the single rate if they chose not to accept health insurance, a percentage of the single rate, as opposed to the standard that is across most town employees, which is what the town saves. So if there's a couple, it would be for a family of 2. If it had kids, and each one of those has a different rate. And when these department heads were told that the policy was they would be reimbursed a single rate, but then find out that that was not equitable compared to the rest of the town members. So to make it consistent across the town, this is an appropriate thing to do.
Yes, Councilor Wadecki.
This is a real fairness issue. It only actually affects 3 employees, but it's still, they were unfairly told that they were only going to be reimbursed at 25% of the single rate when everyone else is reimbursed at whatever they would have paid. But with this came the discussion that we don't know if people tell us when their life events change. I mean, when a family goes from a family to a couple, that would change that, reimbursement. So this brought on a lot of discussion of how we were going to find out, the census, have people tell us what they are at a given year, because a lot of people's circumstances change. We never have the problem when they have children them telling us. It's when the children go off that we don't always know about it.
Any further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Item number 15.
We make a motion to authorize overspending of up to $5,000 in account 1012055-56700, Gales Ferry 5 different vehicle equipment and parts. In addition, grant a bid waiver to Shipments Fire Equipment in the amount of $5,018 to purchase and replace the light tower on Gales Ferry Fire Department's rescue truck.
Second.
Two parts to this. First, the easy part, the bid waiver required because the cost of $5,000 and it's a sole source bid. Secondarily, the stated the light tower was damaged. There is sufficient funds in the account, so typically we wouldn't have this motion until the account was actually overexpended. But Chief Saccone came to us with the projection of what he was going to spend for the rest of the year being proactive, and because of that, we were able to take care of it as opposed to waiting until after the account is actually overexpended. So thank Chief Saccone for looking ahead and not waiting until after the account is overexpended.
This is by charter the way that it's supposed to occur. Unfortunately, often it doesn't. So I agree, it was really proactive of him to come to us. It's also, by doing it this way, if there's funds in his budget, it will cover his overexpenditure, and if it's not, we'll have to take it from somewhere else in the budget. But it was something to make sure that he doesn't run out of money, doesn't come to us out of money, and allows us to get the fire truck fixed.
Any other discussion, questions?
I'm going to bend the agenda just a little bit here. I noticed Chief Saccone in the audience, and he's kind of a modest guy, but I also saw an article in Patch today that the pending fire police legislation, it was introduced by Joe Corton, and had its roots here in Ledyard, actually in Gales Ferry. Larry LaFlamme was almost hit by a car. He's a volunteer. He had to jump over a guardrail. He's 70 years old. It's okay, but that got Chief Saccone thinking about it. He contacted Representative Courtney's office, and they've got the legislation.
It was actually introduced by Courtney in the Congress in Blumenthal in the Senate. So they have there's bills working in both houses. And as it was reported, not quite well enough in the press, it's not going to cost anything. It's just adding the fire police to the number of people eligible. So if something happens to a fire police, and I believe there was 56 fire police? 68 have been killed in the line of duty. And they're not covered under this legislation because they're not recognized as fighting fires. But after 9/11, they recognized fire chaplains, which I agree should be recognized. But the fire police, they are the ones that are out there when the cars try to go by them. And there's been many instances where our alleged Gales Ferry Fire Police have had to get out of the way of people who just thought they're not stopping.
They're often there first. There's no equipment. There's just fire police.
And a flashlight sometimes.
Yep. So, thank you, Chief.
I had one question. I don't know if you need to amend the motion. It's not a purchase and replace, it's a repair.
Okay. So friendly amendment, instead of in the bid waiver section, instead of purchase or replace, change to repair.
That's a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
And item A, it's not a light bar, it's a light tower.
That's just the
Oh,
attachment.
yeah, it's a document. Thanks.
Okay, we're good now?
Yeah.
Okay. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. And one of these evenings, we're going to have something to discuss under the discuss work session.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, the meeting is, adjourned with no objection.
Thank you.